This comes as no surprise. The majority of foods purchased by Americans, 60%, contain a number of artificial additives such as preservatives, sweeteners, coloring, and flavoring agents. Food additives are everywhere because they're supposed to extend shelf life and improve taste. Yet the health consequences of consuming these substances are still understudied and not clear to the public. So here we are analyzing and trying to get a better grasp of the impact of the food additive exposure over time, because this is vital to understanding its role in the numerous negative health developments that have been linked to their consumption, including increased body weight, negative changes to a person's gut microbiome, which everyone seems to be experiencing lately, especially over the last 2 decades. And so with knowing this, let's look at why and what foods are banned in Europe but permissible and allowed in the United States, because the European Union as well as the other European countries have flat out banned some of these foods that the United States continues to allow to be put in the food supply. So we'll discuss that in this video, but before we do, this is the legal code, and on this channel we discuss various legal topics, whether that relates to pop culture, policies that you should be made aware of, different laws that impact you as a consumer, just as an individual. I sort of comb through things as a consumer, as a person, like what are the things that people care about, and I like to bring it to the forefront to discuss it with you, just to raise your awareness, because there's so much propaganda and confusion going on, especially post-pandemic. So I hope that this could be a hub for information, that you can learn something so that it can improve your daily life. So if you like that sort of thing, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share with anyone else you think will find value. Along the same vein, I decided to facilitate a medical tourism trip to Colombia in 2023, October of 2023. If you're one of the many millions of Americans, there's about 40 million Americans that don't have adequate health insurance, and so your health is neglected. Your dental health is neglected because you just can't afford to see a doctor. You can't afford the treatment. That I invite you to think about coming to Colombia in order to receive state-of-the-art advanced healthcare at a fraction of what it would cost you in the United States, sometimes 60-70% less than what it would cost you in the United States. The flat fee that's included includes your diagnostic, it includes your consultation with the dentist and with the doctor, as well as what's included in your diagnostic is your MRIs, your CAT scans, any blood work or scanning that you have to do in order to prep for the visit with the physician or with the dentist. That will all be included. So all you will have to do to come out of pocket is for your flight, your airfare, as well as any follow-up appointments with the doctor or with the dentist. So as you can see, the price is very economical. For instance, if you needed a dental implant in the United States, it would cost you starting at $4,000 going up to $10,000. If you needed a dental cleaning, it's around $44. So as you can see, it's extremely affordable. And if you're concerned about whether or not Colombia has adequate health care that is competitive with the United States, as a matter of fact, it outranks the United States and Canada, coming in at number 22 in the world in health care and medical care. Colombia is well respected around the world as being a hub, a place where the medicine is so well developed, so well researched, and so accessible at such a low cost, and that's what it has gotten a reputation for having as it relates to medicine. So it's extremely affordable as well as robust, extensive, has the latest technology, state-of-the-art technology and equipment and tests. Many people are able to receive tests in Colombia that their insurance provider won't even cover in the United States, even though it's necessary, part of their treatment. You could get it at a fraction of what it would cost you in the US if you paid out of pocket, and you can get it easily because it's so accessible. Colombia healthcare is a right and not a privilege. research, and it's not market driven the way it is in the United States, where in Colombia the federal government pours millions and millions and millions of dollars into healthcare, making it affordable, accessible to everyone, even non-Colombians like Americans or people traveling from other countries also come to Colombia for treatment, whereas the United States may be a medical destination for wealthy people. Maybe there's a state-of-the-art treatment that's available in the United States, but it's definitely cost prohibitive for 95% of the population in the US as well as worldwide. So think about it. The details about the trip are included in the description box, and if you have follow-up questions, there's also an email that you could reach out to my team for follow-up questions. Now, without further ado, let's discuss food in the United States and the chemicals that are rampant in the food supply. It's no surprise there's several foods that are banned or have restrictions in Europe but are allowed in food in the United States. Yet it's important to note that the food regulations vary between countries and regions, so it's not uniform across all European countries. But there are a few examples that are just flat out banned in Europe, and you'll understand why. Artificial food coloring. Sometimes artificial food coloring can be under the gamut of blue 1, blue 2, yellow 5, yellow 6, and they're all banned in Europe due to concern over their potential health effects. Blue 1 and blue 2 can be found in candy, cereal, drinks, and pet food. Michael Parisa, Professor Emeritus of Food Science and the past Director of Food Research Institute at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, said that most food dyes are not dangerous with the exception of yellow number 5, but they can influence our perception of food for better or worse. Until the 20th century, food coloring was obtained naturally from natural sources. This is discussed in the book Rich Food, Poor Food. People used to gather spices like saffron or turmeric or beet juice, which had rich hues to their otherwise bland colored food. While this method may have been somewhat limited in shades, at least it was safe. Today, most artificial colors are made from coal tar. For instance, blue number 2 is listed as an ingredient in Mars M&Ms. In a statement from Mars, the company said, around the globe, there can be slightly different formulations and products available based on both local requirements and consumer preferences. All of the colors we use in our products, no matter where they are sold, comply with our own strict internal quality and safety requirements, as well as the applicable laws, regulations, safety assessments relating to colors and added to food. All colors are declared on the label in accordance with the applicable national laws and regulations and have always meet the highest safety regulations. Concern about blue food dyes connection to brain cancer is unproven, he later went on to say, referring to studies in the 1980s where blue number 2 was given to rats over a long period of time in much larger concentrations, so up to 2% of their total food intake. And so anyone would get cancer, become ill because of the amount of exposure to it. Now, public health professor Asa Bradman contributed to a new report that examines the relationship between synthetic food dye and child development. This is the most comprehensive and recent study examining dietary exposure to artificial coloring in vulnerable populations, such as children as well as pregnant women. The report is the product of a 2-year multifaceted evaluation of 7 synthetic food dyes that have been approved by the Food and Drug Administration, and it was extensively reviewed existing studies and effect of these dyes on both humans and laboratory animals. The percentage of American children and adolescents diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, has increased from an estimated I think it was 6.1% to 10.2% during the past 20 years. Concerns about increasing rates of ADHD and other behavioral disorders prompted the California legislature to ask for this sort of research to be conducted on the food dye assessment. Now, evidence has shown that the synthetic food associated with adverse neurobehavioral outcomes in many children, with increasing numbers in American children diagnosed with specifically behavioral disorders. Now, this assessment can inform efforts to protect children from exposures that may exacerbate behavioral problems. The risk assessment evaluated studies that placed children on a dye-free diet for several weeks and measured their behavior. The children were also given food or drinks with dye added, and measures of their behavior were recorded. These studies demonstrated that some children are likely to be adversely affected by synthetic food compared to others. Again, in terms of the animal studies indicated synthetic food dyes affect activity, memory, learning, cause changes in neurotransmitters in the brain, and cause microscopic changes in the brain structure. The findings revealed the consumption of synthetic food dyes results in hyperactivity and other neurobehavioral problems in some children, and that children vary in their sensitivity to synthetic food. So this study shows that there are some harmful impacts. There are approved levels of synthetic food that was established by the FDA decades ago, but do not reflect the newer research. The FDA's acceptable daily intake levels, ADI, for synthetic foods are based on 35 to 70-year-old studies that were not designed to detect the types of behavioral effects that have been observed in children presently. Comparisons with newer studies indicate that the current ADIs may not adequately protect children from the behavioral impacts. Another one, hormonal treated beef. Now, this is used, it's a growth hormone in beef production. It's banned in Europe, of course. However, in the United States, hormones like estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone are commonly used to enhance growth in cattle. Also, we have chlorinated chicken in Europe. The use of chlorine washes to disinfect poultry carcasses is prohibited. However, in the United States, this practice is allowed and frequently used, and chlorine is commonly used to wash chicken meat. Genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, the cultivation and sale of genetically modified crops are more strictly regulated in Europe compared to the US. Some GMO crops that are approved in the US may face restrictions or flat out bans in certain European countries that they won't import those products. Also, trans fat, or partially hydrogenated oils, a significant source of trans fat, have been largely phased out of Europe due to the health concerns. However, they're still allowed in certain foods in the United States. For instance, coffee mate, Ritz crackers, and those warm, buttery Pillsbury biscuits are all banned in Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Iceland, Norway, and Denmark because of the trans fats. The trans fats like partially hydrogenated soybean and cottonseed oil. Also, Mountain Dew also has a vegetable oil component. Brominated vegetable oil, or BVO, acts as an emulsifier or stabilizer of the soda and sports drink, preventing the flavoring from separating and floating to the surface. This ingredient is banned in more than 100 countries because it contains bromine, a chemical whose vapors can be corrosive or toxic. Aurora Gonzalez, a spokeswoman for PepsiCo, which owns Mountain Dew, said, "We take consumer safety and product integrity seriously, and we can assure you that Mountain Dew is safe. As standard practice, we constantly evaluate our formulas and ingredients to ensure they comply with all regulations and meet the high quality standards our consumers expect." Now, the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, is supposed to protect the public and monitor dangerous foods or drugs or on the market. as it relates to these lists of foods, it says no need to worry or get in a frenzy over these foods. We're doing our jobs to monitor. So don't worry about what Europe is doing or what Europe is banning. Look over here. We're making sure you're safe. And here's even a quote from the FDA. As part of the overall commitment to ensure the safety of the food supply, the agency uses an extensive science-based process to evaluate the safety of food additives. The law requires that the FDA determines there is reasonable certainty that an additive does not cause harm when it is used intended. The agency continues to monitor the science on food additives and is prepared to take appropriate action if there are any safety concerns. Here's the tricky thing about this statement. Food impact studies were done decades ago. Like I said, these studies may be as old as 70 years or 30 years. And so the FDA has not revisited these studies to reevaluate and say, well, now we know. They are still relying on old data that has not been retested. And FDA considers something safe or food safe as long as it doesn't cause cancer. A fundamental long-standing assumption informing the agency determination of safe use is that unless the chemical is a carcinogen, that's the ultimate threshold, then it's considered safe. But we know now that there are loads of other diseases that a food can, in the aggregate, cause, the complications it can cause. The FDA is relying on studies also supplied by the food manufacturer itself, such as Nestle, which is a large multinational food and beverage company and conducts its own food studies. Nestle invests significant resources in research and development to understand consumer preferences and develop new products and improve existing ones. They have a dedicated team of scientists and research and experts who work on various aspects of food and nutrition. So asking Nestle to do these studies is sort of like asking the fox to watch the hen house. Of course the fox is going to eat the hens, and that the studies are not going to be impartial. In conclusion, in sum, the FDA has fallen short in its responsibility to identify and thoroughly evaluate what chemicals may cause the type of long-lasting diseases that have become so prevalent among Americans. Not just limited to behavioral neurodevelopmental disorders, but also the chronic obesity that many Americans are experiencing. Another area where American government has failed gravely. So it seems like you could just create any type of food, package it, sell it in the supermarket without very little regulation, and it will sell, despite the health impact that it may have on people's lives. The almighty dollar is the most important thing, not people's health. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.